trying to relate to their children as opposed to just lecture. Listen, don't just lecture, but also think back to when you were their age. What would you have done differently? And talk to them about it in that way, from the standpoint of, okay, listen, this is a big decision, right? Particularly when it comes to sex. Let's just call it what it is.
Today's guest is Dr. Kela, a seasoned family doctor and author of Nia and the Number Games, a teenager's guide to education, relationships, and sex, based out of the Atlantic, Georgia area in the United States. Dr. Kela is also the host of Let's Talk Thursdays and Let's Talk Teens social media weekly chats that encourage and support teens and parents. Welcome, Dr. Kela.
Thank you very much for having me, Anita.
Oh, it's my absolute pleasure, and it's a passion to help teenagers for me as well. I'm really excited for our conversation today. So, with that said, thank you. With that said, what is one of the most courageous things that you have done?
Well, I had to create the courage to leave my safe job. Like many women, I got the message growing up that what I should do is go to school, get good grades, and then get a safe career and work until retirement. And as a little kid, I was that person who liked to help my elders. And even though when I first started college, I wasn't exactly sure what I wanted to do, I did know I wanted to help people. And so when I wrote my personal statement, my advisor said, Miss Henry, I think you should take a Biology 101 class. And so I did. And all of my classmates were aspiring physicians. And so in a way, it was like positive peer pressure. And I thought to myself, well, if everyone else is going to be a doctor, I can be one too. And so that's how I started my journey along becoming a physician. And when you first get started as a young physician, you're very optimistic, right? You're going to save the world, you're going to heal almost all of your patients. But over time, the that optimism kind of wore off. And I know that the health system in Europe is a lot different than it is here in the United States. And we have moved away from really caring about the patients to almost treating them like they're a herd of cattle to be brought into our offices. Yes. And they're almost like numbers now. And in fact, even us physicians are being treated like just a cog in a wheel. They've changed our names from doctor to provider. You're a provider. And it's like, I spent all of these years working and studying really hard. I want to be called doctor. I've earned it. And so over time, you start getting worn down. And I didn't realize that until during the pandemic, my mother suffered a stroke. And unfortunately, I my expectations weren't met. I thought mom would fully recover and maybe have some mild deficit here or there, but she didn't. Her stroke was very significant in that her mobility is severely impaired. Now, interestingly enough, her husband, my stepfather, had a stroke 10 years prior, but his was in a different area of the brain. And so he's able to get around inside the house with his walker on his own. But mom is not. She has to have help. Someone has to hold her gait belt and be right there with her. So obviously, I took a few months off to help my mom because I'm the oldest daughter. You know how that is in families. And I'm the one I'm the only physician in the family. And so I'm very close by. My brother lives in my hometown. He lives with my mom, and he is one of her primary caregivers. But, it's a bit different having a son, having to help you with your tend to your needs as opposed to a daughter. Well, that added to the stress that I was already experiencing at work. And getting back to the way the medical system is here, I thought of it kind of like a relay race, right? The traditional the traditional way and strategy for a relay race team to operate is that your very first runner is the second fastest on the team. Your second runner is the third fastest. Your third runner is the slowest, and the anchor is the fastest runner. When it comes to the way medicine is set up in the US, the way this is supposed to be is that the first runner are your support staff, your nurses, your medical assistants, your front office. Secondly is the patient and their families. Third should be corporate. And then the anchor should be us physicians. Well, what's happened here is corporate, the slowest runners, have placed themselves as the anchor. And so that slows everyone down and the team doesn't win. And of course, when that happens, everyone is dissatisfied. And so then you add the stress of mom's new condition. And I noticed that I was just really starting to burn out. And I did become burned out. Even my mom and my uncles noticed that I was slowing down because I was coming home every weekend after I returned to work when she was stable. My sister even said, "Sis, listen, I'm emotionally prepared when mom transitions, but I am not ready to live in a world without you. You have got to take care of yourself." Yeah. And that got me in the feels because my sister and I are very close. So I said, you know what? I am going to step away and just step away, step back, and begin to take care of me.
Wow. That is one courageous journey for sure. And I think the thing is sometimes, you've got to take that absolutely courageous decision to think, hold on a moment, what about me? And it takes someone else close to you sometimes to see it. We don't always see it ourselves.
Exactly.
Yeah. I
I just
mean,
kept
I think,
going and going.
and the thing is, a lot of burnout that happens a lot. And under the circumstances with being a doctor, you're constantly on the go. It's long shifts, a lot of responsibilities. You've literally a case of life and death in your hands each day.
Yes.
Yes.
I was going to say, we come into the profession wanting to help others, and we have certain expectations. And then over the years, more and more responsibility was placed upon us. So you can see why the burnout happens so often. And over time, you just start to feel dissatisfied with what you're doing. But at the same time, you have to balance your patients need you. And I felt that. I mean, mom needed me, my family needed me, but my patients did too. And outside of just taking care of patients day in and day out, I have a heart for teenage girls. And so I would also do my work outside of the office in terms of doing speaking engagements for young girls. And of course, I wrote my book, Nia and the Numbers Game, Teenager's Guide to Education, Relationships, and Sex, which I was inspired to do by the young ladies and their moms who were bringing them in to see me. So I want to do my part to make this world a better place than when I made my debut back in the 1970s. Yeah, I'm a woman of a certain age.
You most certainly don't look it.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
So, how does that feel not seeing patients every day?
You know, um, it's this dual process. There's duality there. On the one hand, I do miss them. I've had patients to reach out to me on social media, and a few times when I've been out and about running errands, I've run into a patient at the post office or at the grocery store, and they're asking, "Where are you? When are you coming back? I miss you." I've gotten some very lovely hugs from my patients. So there's a part of me that really misses them. But then there's also The part of me, though, that doesn't miss the grind at work. So I'm still in the process of figuring out what's going to be the best way for me to combine my knowledge and skill set and my love of helping people with also honoring myself.
Wow. And I think, yeah, it's lovely. It's if there is such a thing called balance, it's managing to get that balance or as close to it as possible. Absolutely. And especially being a doctor, you want to look after your own health as well.
Yes. But you know what they say? Doctors make the worst patients sometimes because we know we know a lot, and yeah, we're comfortable in the role of being the caregiver and not always being the one cared for. But then there's
Yeah,
risk, right? When we're doing there's not balance there. Always doing the caregiving and not being on the receiving end of that. And then, of course, you end up becoming burned out. Like there's no more water left in your cup, or it's like, I guess, being a car that's nearly on E as far as the gas tank.
absolutely. Dr. Kayla, now that you've stepped away from direct patient care, how do you stay connected to your purpose as a healer?
Well, what I do is make sure I'm doing things that refuel me. Again, doing some writing, doing some speaking, and continuing to make content on my channel for teenage girls and their parents. Also, one of the ways that I refuel, so to speak, is travel, because that's something that really brings me joy. I like getting out there and having a change of scenery instead of being in the same place all the time.
So that's fabulous. So do tell me more about your book because you are the author of Nia and the Numbers Game, a teenage guide to education and sex. So tell me more about that and how did
Well,
that come about?
sure. What One of the things I noticed is that when young ladies perhaps lose their virginity in high school, their moms would bring them in after this was discovered, and there would be all this tension in the exam room. The mother's upset, of course. Dr. Henry, I want you to check her for everything, check her for pregnancy. That's, of course, a big concern, as well as STIs. And the young lady would be ashamed. Um, you could tell there was just all of that tension. When I would question further, one of the things I realized that was quite common is that there had not been a very realistic talk between the parent and the daughter about sex. It's typically just based in religion, like, don't do it, keep your skirt down and your legs closed. But the reality is, the desire for intimacy is a normal human drive, and teenagers are in a transitional period from childhood to young adulthood where their hormones are all over the place. And so we have to have educational and realistic conversations around these topics so that these young ladies are prepared for the little tricks and tips that their romantic interests will try in order to manipulate them into losing their virginity. And so that's where the inspiration came from. I wrote the book to discuss all of the teenage angst that teenagers face, but also the other things they have to deal with that was different from my era, like social media. Also, how to navigate changes in friendships because their high school friends may not end up at the same college as them. And how do your friendships change? How do you deal with the pressure if you're dating and the boy wants to take the relationship in another direction and you like him, you're attracted to him, but at the same time, you're trying to adhere to those values your parents have inculcated into you. So, how do you manage that? And how to manage, for example, applications to college and deciding your career and managing relationships. So, teenagers have to deal with all of that. And I wanted to address all of it in my book. And so I have the character Nia, whose name means purpose in the Swahili language. And I follow her from middle school to through high school, college, and med school. Now, I've been asked, is this autobiographical? And no, it's not. It's a fictional story. But I did pull some elements of my life because obviously I'm a physician, right? I went through the process of matriculating college and med school. So I pulled from that. And I also added elements of young ladies who I've met over time into some of the characters in the book. Now, while it's a fictional story, I also have the factual part. At the end of each chapter, there's this section called Let's Talk, right? Like Let's Talk Thursdays and Let's Talk Teens, where I come
Mm.
in and discuss and kind of do a summary of what happened in the previous chapter. So, as an example, in the first chapter, Nia's menstrual cycle comes on while she's at school. And so at the end of that chapter, I discuss what the menstrual cycle is. And I have a little quiz to test young ladies' knowledge. I have been surprised that even in the 21st century, there are still some young ladies who have some misinformation and wrong ideas about their cycle. You know, in some cultures, there's a lot of shame around it. And there shouldn't be because it's natural. It's a part of our lives as women and these young ladies who are developing into women. And I'm very proud of the fact that a number of people who read and reviewed the book said, oh my gosh, I really wish I had something like this when I was growing up. So it's a manual for young ladies to address all of their life's changes, and parents can give that to them. And I encourage parents to read it first because it's appropriate for them. And if the girls are a bit younger, it's made for the 13 to 17-year-old age group. But if you have a 12-year-old who's mature for her age and is a good reader, then I think the parent can read it along with them.
That's absolutely brilliant. And absolutely, things like this are still, in a way, a taboo subject. They really need to be out in the open because it's natural. We all go through it as women, teenagers, you know, young adults. And I think, yeah, that's really brilliant. So, is that where the Let's Talk Teens social media chat generated from? Because you were aware of all these teenagers that needed to talk.
Yes, absolutely. And then another part of it, Anita, was unfortunately, we live in an age now where there's so much misinformation, disinformation, and there are
Mm.
negative aspects of social media that I think have a harmful impact on young ladies' self esteem and sense of self worth. And prior to writing the book, I would complain about this like, oh my gosh, why do we have this type of content being marketed or pushed toward young people? And then I thought, well, I can't just talk about it. Why don't I do something about it and create content that's more positive and something that young ladies and their parents could use?
So agree. There's so much misinformation out there, and there's just bombarded with social media. Do this, do that, and there's so much information on social media that the teenagers are taking for gospel, and it's nothing to do with that. And absolutely, it's getting the right information to the right people at the right time. And yes, you know, social media plays such a big part in all of our lives, let alone the amount it influences the youngsters. You know, they'll see something, they think they'll follow them and do this. And yeah, I can totally understand the need for what you're doing. Absolutely valuable. Absolutely. And all the links will be in the show notes. So do go ahead and like check it all out, please. And like you said, for parents as well, you know, you encourage them to read the books first or have a look at what's going on. Because the thing is, we're trying to help, you're trying to help people, not
Yes.
give them something for the parents to be worried about. Because that's what happens a lot of the times. The parents think they're going to find out all this information. You know, is it the right information? There's a lot of taboo still about that. Even in schools, you know, some parents still think the way they're teaching them about certain things, even their sex education, is it the right information? There are guidelines, I can imagine, but yeah, read the books for yourselves. And it is a minefield out there, an
Yes,
absolute
indeed.
minefield. Yes. So how can like parents be more at ease with any of it? I know with a teenage daughter, and if you've just heard like she just had sex, you're not going to be at ease with anything. I totally get that. But is there any way they can try and understand it a bit more? I mean, the children want to grow up, they want to do things. And yeah, and like you said, if they like that person, they do want to take the next step. Absolutely. Is there anything you can say that will can kind of give parents a bit of a guideline?
Sure. I would say to the parents, remember when you were that age. You were once a teenage girl for the moms or a teenage boy for the fathers. So think back to what it was like for you when you initially began to have those little heart flutters, when you had your first crush, and when perhaps your peer group was trying to pressure you to kiss someone or to make out with them, so to speak. So, how did you handle it? Think back. How would you have handled it differently? So I think for parents, trying to relate to their children as opposed to just lecture, listen, don't just lecture, but also think back to when you were their age. What would you have done differently? And talk to them about it in that way, from the standpoint of, okay, listen, this is a big decision, right? Particularly when it comes to sex. Let's just call it what it is. And I tell parents, sex is not for children. It's for consenting adults only. And so if we approach it from that standpoint, this is what needs to be a part of the conversation with their children. Not just, I'm going to lock you in the house, right? You are grounded forever. One of the funny things you'll see often in American cinema, and I don't know if it's like that in the UK, but you'll see a dad say to his toddler daughter, all right, you're not going to get married till you're 40, right? And we laugh at that, but that isn't necessarily realistic. Or when a little girl says, Daddy, I have a boyfriend, and she's maybe 5 or 6 years old. We know she doesn't really have a boyfriend. There's just probably a little boy in her class that she is fond of, and perhaps he's fond of her too. But the fathers get very possessive and upset about this. And I'm like, that's not, I think, the best response, especially if he's serious about it. It's one thing if he's being facetious, but when there's this
Mm.
anger, no, you can't play with that little boy anymore because he's a boy. They're 4, 5, 6 years old. However, when you hit puberty, all right, now the conversations need to mature and grow because the child is maturing and growing. So use age appropriate language and explain what the concerns are, as opposed to, like I said, just lecturing and telling the kid what to do. This is off limits and that's it. To me, sometimes that backfires. Often it backfires because now the kid wants to try it even more. They want to sneak around. And I want parents and their kids to have open conversations, just like the one we're having right now. And I encourage patients all the time, please listen and check in with your child at least weekly. Just ask them, what's going on? How are you feeling? What's happening at school? What's happening in your personal life? Let's talk.
Absolutely. And it's so important. And I love the fact you talk about other things on your platform as well, like topics like depression, relationships, and self worth. So tell me more about when this happens and where can teenagers or even parents, if they want to find out what's going on, ask you questions. Where can they join you?
They can go to my website, drkela.com, drkela.com. Also, they can use my full name, drkelahenry.com, goes to the same site. And then every Thursday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time, I have my Instagram and YouTube and Facebook across all of my platforms. I post about a topic, and I have been focusing quite a bit over the years on mental health for teenagers. One of the things I noticed during the pandemic is that the incidence and reports of mental health issues, particularly depression and anxiety, skyrocketed in our teenage population, particularly among girls. And another thing was an increase in suicidal ideation. And that, of course, is quite scary. We're very concerned about that. It's horrible for anyone to consider taking their own life, but for a teenager, you think, oh my goodness, what a loss of potential. So we want to prevent that from happening. And so, yes, I encourage patients to go to my Instagram, Facebook, YouTube for my topics every Thursday. Another thing that I did after I published Nia and the Numbers Game, last year I created a t-shirt, Everything is Possible, because I want young ladies to think you're not limited to what society tells you you can do. Well, you can only do this, or you cannot do that. Whatever her mind can conceive of, she can potentially do that. And so I have that Everything is Possible t-shirt. It on the back, it has a number of careers, just as examples of what young ladies can do, particularly when they have a gift or a calling on their life. So I would
Absolutely.
love young
Yeah.
ladies to see that and get that as a gift and wear it proudly.
Absolutely love that. Thank you for sharing that. That's fantastic. And all the links will be in the show notes. So please do go ahead, get the book, join the meetings, and get the t shirt. And like Dr. Keela's just said, wear it proudly. Absolutely. Oh, that's fantastic. Brilliant. Do you plan on returning to practicing medicine? And if so, how would you ensure that you don't get burnt out again?
I do plan on returning to practice. However, this time around, I will have a lighter schedule, and I know that would help to prevent the burnout. And I will also have more of a balance between my clinical work with patients and then my work in the community, because
That's
my
brilliant.
clinical work, it takes from me, right? I'm giving care, I'm caregiving, but then the work I do in the community refuels me
So, do you spend a lot of time in the community?
as much as I can. When I receive invitations to come and speak to some of the nonprofit organizations for girls, if my schedule allows, absolutely, I'll do it. And then also just within my family and the children of friends I have, the young ladies who are in my sphere of influence, I make myself available to give them advice and chat with them. And I've had a few of my friends with young daughters say, look, can you talk to her? Because what I say, it's coming from mom, and you're more of an objective, third party. Maybe she'll receive it better coming from you. And so, absolutely, I'll do that. I consider myself part of the village. There's a saying that it takes a village to raise a child. And so I'm part of that village.
Absolutely. And it's so true. And as parents, yeah, the children don't want to listen to the parents. So, they can look to someone else that they trust and will give sound advice, and just someone they can talk to. Because I think this day and age, teenagers, it's more complex and more than ever. It's a minefield, and I keep using that word, but it really is. It's difficult. It's a hard time for them. There's
Yes,
so much going on. There's so much influence out there. And, you know, thankfully, when I grew up, there was no social media.
same
And,
here.
you know, yeah. And there's a lot of competition. And if your friends are doing it, you kind of almost have to do it, whether you want to or not. It's the done thing. I mean, we never had phones at school.
Right.
Perhaps, Really showing my age here, but it's it's a tough time for kids, I must say. And having
And,
that
be-
one person that listens to you is fantastic.
and I think because it's tougher for kids, the
Mm,
village needs to be even more involved, more than ever before. I think in the past, we were confident that what we were teaching our children in the home was enough because pretty much everyone in your neighborhood or in your community had similar values. But we live in a global world now where we are exposed to people from everywhere, from every culture and every type of influence. So this is why I think it's more important for parents to be aware of this and to take a more active role in doing those check-ins and talking to their kids and listening to their kids about what they're experiencing and creating that safe space. There are studies that show that teenagers actually want their parents to be the ones to talk to them about sex, about education, about relationships. They want their parents to do it. And so parents have to also create the courage to get over their fear of having the difficult conversation. But the conversations need to be had. And so let's have them. I think it'll intensify the bond between the parent and the child.
absolutely. It's that loving trust, that safe place to go. And we all consider our home to be that safe place. So,
Absolutely.
absolutely. Yeah, I can't echo that enough. So, Dr. Keeler, if there was one key takeaway you want every listener to walk away with today, what would that be?
Good question. The one takeaway I would say that crosses all age groups. So the parents, the grandparents, and these teenage girls is to put yourself first in terms of developing your self worth. You are worthy.
I love that. Absolutely. So, where can the listeners find you online, your book, your meetings, Dr. Keeler?
They can find me at drkela.com, which is my website. And then all of my social media is Dr. Kela.
That's fantastic. Please do go ahead and connect. I think it's such a valuable resource for anyone, parents or children. Get the help you need. And if you just want to see what is available out there as well, and if you're scared about asking any questions, just listen in. You might find something that you really resonates and you think, yeah, actually, this is a safe place. I can. And if you're not sure, bring a friend along. It's there to be shared.
Yes, the more the merrier.
Absolutely. Because, like, let's face it, they come in twos or threes, and it's nice to have like little groups. At least I would like to think our children have their peers that are there to support them, and obviously, as being parents, we're always there. You know, caregivers, we're always there, but sometimes it's nice to have a friend with them.
Right. And then you want to spread a positive message. It's amazing sometimes how maybe a bad message can spread like wildfire. Or I want to do the opposite. I want the good messages to spread like wildfire and to influence people in a positive way.
Absolutely, I love that. Yes. So, thank you for sharing your insightful wisdom and knowledge with us today. And by doing so, you have helped so many others and made a difference. I'd really like to not acknowledge you for that, Dr. Keeler.
Thank you so much, Anita.
It's my absolute pleasure. So, we are all about Create the Courage to Be Fearless podcast here. What is your definition of courage?
Courage is the ability to face your fear and then beat it up. You just go right through it like a punch from Muhammad Ali or Mike Tyson. You recognize it's there and it's either you or the fear. And so you're going to be the winner.